Hey all, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It is August 27th, 2025. I have several stories for you and a couple of videos. I'm going to share what the latest that's going on with Israel, Gaza, West Bank, Syria, Lebanon. So, a whole plethora of different things. We're going to start with this interview with Colonel McGregor by Danny Davis. This particular little clip that I want to share with you that's vital. So here we go.
Now, since you mentioned the subject of the Middle East, there was reportedly an actual shouting match in an Israeli cabinet meeting between the chief of the IDF and Netanyahu, who wants to continue on with this occupation of Gaza, to continue on with this methodical, by bulldozer, physical destruction of the infrastructure, so it turns it to physical dust, not literal, but physical. And he says we can't, the IDF commander argued we can't do this. We need an immediate ceasefire to end this conflict. Otherwise, we put both our troops and the remaining hostages at risk. And so far, it seems that Netanyahu has gone on with his own version of a reality TV show and says, nope, that's not true. I'm not going to go with it. At least so far, they're going to continue on with the occupation. Where do you see that going?
Well, the Israelis, I'm told, are also trying to recruit mercenaries from various sources in the West, people that are willing to come in there and do the job for money. They're also trying to entice Jews from the United States, North America, and other parts of Western Europe to come back and join the IDF and fight. That's not going very well. So I think there's no doubt he's in a lot of trouble, but he still has his ace in the hole, and that's absolute control over us. And we are not scaling back our support in any way, shape, or form. And we are providing the Israeli Defense Force with everything that it could possibly need. And there has been no change in that. By the way, we're still supplying the Ukrainians. We're sending things over there. Now, but you got to look at where the money goes and the activities as opposed to listening to the rhetoric. And that's when you discover really nothing has changed very much since Biden left. And so that's the problem, too. So I think Mr. Netanyahu has serious problems, but he still has a great deal of power and influence, and he's not going to give that up. And that includes power and influence over us. Remember, if he backs down from any of this, that's the end of his Greater Israel project, which has implications for Syria, for Lebanon, for Egypt, for Jordan, for everybody. He's not prepared to do that. He says it's not over, and I'm going to continue pressing forward. And I still think he has enormous support from the Israeli population. So that's why I've said from the beginning that what began with the attack on Iran during our negotiations with the Iranians is not over. That was a pause, not an end to the conflict. And that's going to re-erupt, I suspect, in September.
But now, where can this go, Doug? Because when you take a look at that, the Israeli Defense Force has not been able to, in any meaningful way, end the conflict in Gaza by itself. The Houthis are still out there. Even the Hezbollah is greatly weakened, but they still exist in there. Iran still exists with its missile capabilities that clearly can penetrate all of the integrated air defenses that Israel has. And then you see things like what happened, was reported in the last 48 hours or so, where Israel attacked a hospital. And then when the emergency workers came to get the victims out, they double tapped it and blew up all those people. Just a heinous crime by any stretch. And yet there's no backing down from any of that to keep going. But I don't see any capacity to actually accomplish what you talk about, this Greater Israel project, however defined. I don't think that they have the capacity to do it, however much we support them. Where is this going?
Well, the Israeli Air Force, other than its inability to necessarily, as you point out, overwhelm and utterly destroy the integrated air defenses in Iran, which were damaged and have since been repaired and are growing increasingly effective, as I'm told, through various intelligence sources. But keep something in mind. If you believe in what you're doing, you keep doing it, regardless of the potential downsides. As long as we continue to subsidize the Israeli economy and keep that afloat, and we're pumping huge quantities of money into that place. It's not just military, it's also to keep up the standard of living. Because
never mind the standard of living for Americans.
Otherwise, Israel would fall apart, overnight without that kind of economic subsidy. That's one thing. The other thing is that if you talk to Americans, and I try to talk to them wherever I travel, I would say at least 50% of the time, the Americans I talk to and I ask them about Gaza, they either haven't paid much attention to it or they say, that's fine, kill them. And I say, well, these are human beings. They said, no, they're not. These are Muslim Arabs. The hell with them. Let them kill them. It's not our problem. I'm serious. I run into people that tell me that flat out. You're wrong. I think this is great. Trump's doing exactly the right thing. Let these Israelis kill them. Now, that's not totally surprising because most Americans have been fed a steady diet of hatred towards Arabs. I mean, let's face it, to know the Arabs from the standpoint of the average soldier who was shot at on the ground was not necessarily to love them. We were in the Middle East. We understood the differences in culture and mentality and behavior. But the average person doesn't understand that. The average person simply says, oh, these people are terrible. They deserve the worst. The Israelis are counting on that, and they have the news media to reinforce that negative stereotype repeatedly. And let's be frank, the Muslims don't help matters. If they bring up things like Sharia law and honor killings and all this in places like Canada or the Midwest, that doesn't endear them under any circumstance. That's unacceptable inside our societies, and that's immediately projected onto the people that live in Gaza or the West Bank, rightly or wrongly. And in most cases, I think probably wrongly. But nevertheless, that's a big issue. And that's why the so-called MAGA base continues to support the kind of policy that goes on. It's not easy for me to understand or justify. I'm just saying these are the facts. So if you look at that, you look at the enormous quantity of money that's on hand to continue to buy support in Congress. If you look at the people that surround the president and who they are and what they represent and the sectors from which they've come, particularly the financial sector, there's no reason to expect any change. So I think we'll see a resumption of the war. I think we're going to see more people killed. Now, what will that provoke in the region? And could that bring in the Russians, the Chinese, and others? That's eminently possible. And that's a whole different set of questions worth exploring. But right now, I think it can continue. So I do not sign up for the notion that Israel, because of its obvious internal strains, is necessarily incapable of sustaining the larger operation.
Did you find that disturbing as much as I did? The fact that some of our fellow Americans who are watching this right now, that they are speaking this way? I will tell you that on X, I've seen posts that kind of mirror what he's just talking about. Basically saying, well, just need to give up Hamas. We gotta get rid of Hamas, so these people just have to starve. We just gotta get rid of these people. And sometimes I would want to write, do you hear yourself? Listen to what you're saying. You've lost your humanity. And the saints warn about that, about growing a cold heart. And that is very hard to come out of once you're in that, and then you're more influenced by the evil one. So that part really got to me. I'm going to share a little tiny piece of Colonel Wilkerson's take on what's going on there.
Came out yesterday shows that how the British are gathering information from Gaza and providing Israel with information in real time. And
they were flying their planes out of Cyprus and running intel flights all over Israel and downloading it to Israel, to the IDF, so they could better target, better kill, better murder, better slaughter.
As you can see how he feels about this. Anybody that actually has a heart and has any kind of humanity in them would be saying the same thing. So, as the genocide continues, let's go on and let's pray for those people in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank. Let's go to this story that's come up recently. Orthodox and Latin Jerusalem patriarchates warn of imminent Gaza City offensive, vow to remain with civilians. This came out today. The Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem and the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem issued a joint statement yesterday expressing grave concern over Israel's announced plans to take control of Gaza City, warning that mass evacuations and military preparations signal an imminent offensive. They report that evacuation orders have already been issued for several neighborhoods in Gaza City, accompanied by heavy bombardment causing further destruction and death. The Patriarchates emphasize that their compounds, the Orthodox compound of St. Porphyrios and the Holy Family compound, have sheltered hundreds of civilians since the war's outbreak, including elderly people, women, children, and people with disabilities cared for by the Sisters Missionaries of Charity. Leaving Gaza City and trying to flee to the south would be nothing less than a death sentence, the statement declares, explaining why clergy and nuns have decided to remain and continue caring for those seeking refuge. The Patriarchates call for an immediate end to the violence, stating there is no reason to justify the deliberate and forcible mass displacement of civilians. They appeal to the international community to act to end what they termed a senseless and destructive war, while also calling for the return of missing people and Israeli hostages. The statement concludes with a prayer for conversion of hearts so that we may walk in the paths of justice and life for Gaza and for the whole Holy Land. There's their full statement. In the path of righteousness there is life. In walking its path there is no death. A few weeks ago, the Israeli government announced its decision to take control of Gaza City. In recent days, the media have repeatedly reported a massive military mobilization and preparations for an imminent offensive. The same reports indicate that the population of Gaza City, where hundreds of thousands of civilians live and where our Christian community is located, is to be evacuated and relocated to the south of the Strip. At the time of this statement, evacuation orders were already in place for several neighborhoods in Gaza City. Reports of heavy bombardment continue to be received. There is more destruction and death in a situation that was already dramatic before this operation. It seems that the Israeli government's announcement that the gates of hell will open is indeed taking on tragic forms. The experience of past campaigns at Gaza, the declared intentions of the Israeli government with regard to the current operation, and the reports now reaching us from the ground show that the operation is not just a threat, but a reality that is already in the process of being implemented. Since the outbreak of the war, the Greek Orthodox compound of St. Porphyrios and the Holy Family compound have been a refuge for hundreds of civilians. Among them are elderly people, women, and children. In the Latin compound, we are hosting since many years people with disabilities who are under the care of the Sisters Missionaries of Charity. Like other residents of Gaza City, the refugees living in the facilities will have to decide, according to their conscience, what they will do. Among those who have sought shelter within the walls of the compounds, many are weakened and malnourished due to the hardships of the last months. Leaving Gaza City and trying to flee to the south would be nothing less than a death sentence. For this reason, the clergy and nuns have decided to remain and continue to care for all those who will be in the compounds. We do not know exactly what will happen on the ground, not only for our community, but for the entire population. We can only repeat what we have already said. There can be no future based on captivity, displacement of Palestinians, or revenge. We echo what Pope Leo the 15th. I hope I got that right. Is it 14th? 15th? I'm terrible at Roman numerals, so sorry. Said a few days ago, all people, even the smallest and weakest, must be respected by the powerful in their identity and rights, especially the right to live in their own lands, and no one can force them into exile. This is not the right way. There is no reason to justify the deliberate and forcible mass displacement of civilians. It is time to end this spiral of violence, to put an end to war, and to prioritize the common good of the people. There has been enough devastation in the territories and in people's lives. There is no reason to justify keeping civilians as prisoners and hostages in traumatic conditions. It is now time for the healing of the long-suffering families on all sides. With equal urgency, we appeal to the international community to act for an end of this senseless and destructive war, and for the return of the missing people and the Israeli hostages. In the path of righteousness there is life, and walking in its path there is no death. Let us pray that all our hearts may be converted, so that we may walk in the path of justice and life for Gaza and the whole Holy Land. May it be so. We must pray for them. That's courage. Their faith in God is strong. These people live their faith every day. They witness it. They show what it means to be a Christian. They're models and great examples of what people who are Christians have done over the centuries, over the whole history of humanity through Christianity. How martyrdoms became in certain eras more than others, but continuing throughout the history of humanity. So let's pray that God watches over them, that He protects the vulnerable, and is with them. A couple other stories. After having said that, we have this story that I thought was ridiculous. Going back to the inhumane Netanyahu, he says that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu officially recognizes Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocide. This is from the Greek newspaper, Greek City Times. In a recent interview with Patrick David, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed Israel's recognition of the Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocide committed by the Turks. When asked why he hadn't yet acknowledged these atrocities, Netanyahu responded, "Actually, we have. The Knesset passed a resolution to that effect." Pressed further on whether the recognition came directly from him, he affirmed, "Well, I'm confirming it now." Well, I don't know about you, but don't you find it kind of ironic, hypocritical that he is recognizing something? And I'm really wondering why Israel hadn't recognized it all this time, because the Armenian genocide with the Pontic Greeks and the Assyrians, about 500,000 of the Armenians was about 1 million, and then 500,000 or more of the Pontic Greeks and Assyrians, all around that time in like the 19 teens and early 20s, if I remember the history right. Why has it taken this long? I know it took a while for the Americans, but I don't think it took that long. I find that very disturbing. And the hypocrisy. Oh yes, I acknowledge the genocide of these three groups of people. Yet I'm committing one right now against another group of people. Yeah. Just sickening. Meanwhile, a couple other stories. Meanwhile, we have the Israel U.S.-Israeli plot to partition Syria's west. Okay. Tel Aviv and Washington have birthed a dangerous geopolitical project uniting Israel's sectarian Salafist militias and foreign lobbying networks to reshape Syria and Lebanon under the guise of minority protection. Will the Levant fall for it? This was back on the 13th. He says, when you look at the map of Syria, I mean, it looks like a flat Rubik's Cube because of the way that the country is divided up, and what we are talking about is mainly the governance of the western part of the country. Senator James Rice, during a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on 13 February. It began with a seemingly offhand statement by U.S. Senator James Rice, chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, just weeks ahead of the March coastal massacres in Syria against the Alawite minority. My idea, he expounded, is we need to focus on this western part and continue to look at the others. But the first objective is if you do not get a handle on this, you are not going to get a handle on the rest of the country. Okay, so you want to handle the whole country. Yes, of course, because we've wanted regime change for a long time and we've wanted to control Syria, along with Israel wanting to do the same thing. So, testifying before the Committee on U.S. Policy post former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, managing director of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Mike Singh, responded, I think that we can focus on what is happening in Western Syria, deal with the government there, while also trying to encourage and maybe facilitate this process of coming together among these groups. But these remarks have since crystallized into a structured multi-front operation, now moving steadily toward execution. The Western Syria project has now shed any ambiguity, emerging as a concrete blueprint that fuses sectarian engineering with foreign military coordination aimed at carving out new realities on both sides of the Syrian-Lebanese border under Tel Aviv's supervision. A plan spanning Syria and Lebanon. The scheme extends deep into Lebanon, where an orchestrated campaign against Hezbollah is intended to disarm the resistance movement while redeploying armed Syrian factions from Lebanon to the coastal strip. The right-wing Israeli government, acting as both sponsor and chief architect, directs the plan through two named coordinators, General Yael and Captain Robert. Marketed publicly as a mission of safeguard minorities, especially Christians. The plan's hidden mechanism is to stage attacks on churches, monasteries, and heritage landmarks across the coast. Okay, that's very upsetting. And let's remember, this is all about the Greater Israel Project. That is very alarming. These provocations are designed to inflame sectarian tensions, creating the pretext for an Israeli-led intervention. One of the earliest signs emerged in Tartus, where internal security announced the arrest of a cell accused of plotting to attack the Mar Elias Maronite Church in Safata. Not to be confused with the suicide bombing of the Mar Elias Greek Orthodox Church in Damascus in June. The revelation, delayed by 3 weeks, sparked suspicions of Israeli infiltration of Syrian security structures. Internal Security Forces Chief in Tartus, Mohammed Abdalal, said the plot was foiled in a high-level security operation after extensive surveillance and was based on precise intelligence indicating that an outlaw group affiliated with remnants of the deposed regime was surveilling Mar Elias Maronite Church in the village of Krebet in the Safata countryside. However, many saw it as a calculated move to unsettle Christian communities and justify external involvement. 2 days before that announcement, partisan media channels circulated an unverified statement claiming the formation of a so-called Christian military council under the name Elias Saab, a figure absent from any credible public record. The declaration spoke of organizing Christian fighters who had defended their communities against extremist factions like HTS, who are now integrated into the state security forces. It called for uniting fighters from Mardeh Saded, Malula, and Tartus under one legal and military umbrella, documenting crimes against Christians for presentation to international bodies, ensuring their representation in any political settlement, and opposing partition while defending a unified secular Syria. While this narrative has circulated in partisan outlets, there is no independent verification of its authenticity or the council's existence. Its sudden appearance, timed just before heightened tensions in the coastal region, has fueled speculation about its role as a manufactured proxy front to justify foreign involvement under the guise of minority protection. So the scheme takes shape on August 5th in the U.S. Capitol. The government relations and strategic advisory firm Tiger Hill Partners announced it would serve as the official representative of the Foundation for the Development of Western Syria. That sounds nefarious. Specializing in government relations and strategic lobbying, Tiger Hill pledged to advocate for Christians, Druze, Alawites, Kurds, and moderate Sunnis while working with U.S. policymakers to shape Syria's political transition. The one-year contract, valued at roughly $1 million, was filed publicly and framed as a mission to ensure minority rights remain central to Washington's Syria policy. When has that ever been true for our government? What have they ever done for Syrian Christians? Can you tell me? In late July, a coastal faction calling itself Men of Light, Saraya al-Jawad, made its debut. The group's statement attacked Abu Muhammad al-Julani, now Ahmad al-Shara, Qatar's emir and Turkey's president, while offering thanks to Egypt, Israeli journalist Eddie Cohen, and notable expatriate Alawite, Druze, and Christian figures, including Sheikh Hikmat, I can't pronounce these names, and Patriarch John al-Yaziji, I guess. Although ridiculed for its unusual tone, its appearance dovetailed with coordinated moves behind the scenes. That coordination became more visible on the 17th of July when the Tel Aviv Hotel in Israel hosted a closed meeting between government officials, Syrian Alawites, and Syrian Druze figures. The attendees included 7 long exiled Alawites and Druze linked to Sheikh, this person's name, Circle, the Druze leader in Israel, both Syrian and Israeli nationals. A second meeting followed on the 22nd, just before Saraya al-Jawad's unveiling and the release of its operational footage. So, Alawite Druze Alliance. On August 6th, Eddie Cohen, an Israeli journalist and commentator on Arab affairs, announced on his Arab language Facebook page and the preparation of an Alawite Druze alliance in the U.S. Observers have paired this with an alleged leaked audio recording of a Syrian woman said to be related to a former senior officer with Israeli ties, speaking to another participant in the Tel Aviv meetings. In the recording, she reportedly described coordination between a secular Syrian expatriate network and Israeli intermediaries, noting specifically that one of the councils involved held shares in Tiger Hill. The recording also alleged plans to covertly deploy some 2,500 foreign fighters into Syria, dispersing them across Homs and the coastal region. Despite the project's determined momentum, domestic and external actors are moving to block it, even offering intelligence support to the Shara administration, despite disputing its legitimacy. This counter-effort has already thwarted the Safata church attack and prevented a major bombing in Damascus. Israel seeks to exploit Syria's sectarian and ethnic divisions to use minorities as political military tools, serving its plan to partition the country and open 2 strategic corridors, an eastern one linking Sawada to Hasaka and a western one running from Syria's coast to Afrin, securing multi-front influence and encircling the Turkish axis from within. Encircling the Turkish axis. How do you think the Turks, Erdogan and the Turks, are going to take this? Western Syria may remain in the shadows or step fully into the open, but its trajectory is unmistakable, a deliberate dismantling of Syria's territorial cohesion, draped in the language of minority protection and enforced through foreign-backed militias and political fronts. For Damascus, Beirut, and the wider region, this is no distant or hypothetical threat, but an active campaign already reshaping the map to the advantage of outside powers. Let's not forget what Metropolitan Neophytus had said about the conflict that was going to happen between Israel and Turkey in the Syria issue, in Syria. This seems to be something that that may lead to that because of what they're doing. And to dovetail, to connect that with this, there's this other story that goes with this. That is, U.S.-Israeli scheme, once again, for Lebanon includes forced displacement, turning Beirut suburb into refugee camp. Again, all of this has to do, in my opinion, about the Greater Israel project. Israel wants to take over all this land. The plan falls in line with Washington's broader goal of disarming the Lebanese resistance. So, there is a new U.S. plan for a clampdown on Beirut's southern suburb, which could potentially see the area come under the control of a foreign or Arab security force, according to a report released by this Al-Akhbar newspaper on August 27th. The southern suburb, a strong base of support for Hezbollah, was heavily bombarded by Israel during its brutal war on Lebanon last year. The suburb has been repeatedly hit by airstrikes since the ceasefire took effect, according to Al-Akhbar. The plan aims to treat the southern suburbs just like Palestinian refugee camps. So they're basically going to murder all of them, bomb them all, kill them. The 1969 Cairo Agreement for years allowed Palestinian groups a degree of autonomy over refugee camps in Lebanon. Despite the agreement being declared null in the 1980s, the status of the camps has remained more or less the same. However, the Lebanese troops maintain checkpoints and a heavy presence around the camps. Palestinian camps in Lebanon have recently begun a symbolic disarmament process in line with the state's efforts to monopolize control of weapons in the country. The Al-Akhbar report frames the new U.S. plan as part of Washington's broader goal of disarming Hezbollah, which the Lebanese government vowed to achieve in a cabinet session in early August. And again, that's not a good thing. Hezbollah needs their weapons to defend the people, and most of the Lebanese are okay with Hezbollah because they are defending them. The U.S. proposal envisions checkpoints at all entrances of the Beirut suburb, thorough searches of individuals and vehicles, and a tight control on goods, materials, and money flows. This mission would not be handed to the Lebanese army. Instead, the plan calls for a foreign security force, possibly an Arab one, to take on the task. The newspaper also said the plan falls in line with U.S. efforts to empty the southern border region. So a recent report from Axios said there is a U.S. plan for a Trump economic zone near the southern border aimed at preventing Hezbollah from reestablishing its presence there. The report said this would happen with the help of Gulf financing. During a press conference in Lebanon's presidential palace on Tuesday, U.S. envoy Tom Barak confirmed plans of the economic zone. We have to have money coming into the system. The money will come from the Gulf. Qatar and Saudi Arabia are partners and are willing to do that for the south of Lebanon, if we're asking a portion of the Lebanese community to give up their livelihood. We have 48,000 people that are being paid by Iran to fight. What are you going to do with them? Take their weapon and say, by the way, good luck planting olive trees? It can't happen. We have to help them. He added, referring to Hezbollah members. We all of us, the Gulf, the U.S., the Lebanese, are all going to act together to create an economic forum that is going to produce a livelihood. This economic zone reportedly serves as an ethnic cleansing plan to remove residents of the southern border villages and prevent the return of those already displaced from there. Lebanese MP and former head of Lebanon's General Security Directorate, Jamal al-Sayed, said in a post last week that envoy Tom Barak has received the Israeli response to his mediation over the south. The response included a ceasefire, the handing over of prisoners, and border demarcation. According to the following conditions, Lebanon must grant Israel the right to remain inside 14 villages and to fully or partially evacuate their residents. Again, same as Gaza. The villages Israel demanded in their entirety are these ones there mentioned that I can't pronounce. The villages where Israel demanded to establish permanent military sites on their outskirts and forests are those names: Kiam, Ramia, Yaron, and others I can't pronounce. If this news is true and becomes official tomorrow or soon, it may be celebrated in our country as an achievement, similar to yesterday's celebration over the symbolic handover of weapons in Barj al-Barajan camp. So, Greater Israel Project, moving ahead, ethnic cleansing of Gazans, Palestinians in the West Bank, Arab, Muslim, Christian, Jew, whatever it is. Same thing in Syria, same thing in Lebanon. That's what they're going for. They're shooting for this. And what this is going to mean is like Abbas Agapia had said. Going to remove all the Christians from where they are from and been there for thousands of years since Christ walked the earth. And that is not going to be a good thing, as she said. No, it's not. So, that's what I had to share with you. A lot of stuff, but important things of what's going on. I hope you got something out of it. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for following my channel. And I hope you're having a wonderful day, evening, and morning. Until next time.